Yes, but then with I think with a cautious remark that I've been exposed to a very little bit of America, a very elite bit of America. I didn't come like the usual immigrant, so I don't know what goes on at birthday parties in this country, but I know what goes on in birthday parties in Holland.
Right.
So having said that, the public discourse seems to be more honest, more confrontational than in Europe, because, and not all of Europe, but mostly continental Europe and the UK, where Europe is struggling with a minority of immigrants whose numbers are increasing. Europe is struggling with the past of the Second World War. They're increasing with what happened at the Balkans. They're increasing with being former colonizers, a history that America doesn't share. The European Union and trying to make that into a success. So there are all these other issues going on the background. America doesn't have all of this. America has natural borders. America has one immigration policy. There's one INS. If you look at the EU members, the 25 nations, each country has its own immigration policy, its own border policy, its own visa policy, its own, and it goes on and on. People speak different languages. So there are all these difficulties that are facing Europe that are not facing the United States. And I notice these things.
Okay.
Yeah,
let me just, I want to read a quotation, and that will give you a sense from your book, The Caged Virgin, that will give you a sense of why I asked the question and why I'm going to put it to you in a slightly different way now in a minute. You write here, I think I am an atheist at heart. It just took me a while to find my convictions confirmed in print somewhere. This may sound arrogant, but I think that most people who call themselves religious are essentially atheists. They avoid thinking about whether they really believe in God. When I read that, I thought that is an extremely European sentiment. Sam Harris would not have had a success with a book called Letter to a Christian Nation in Britain, because Britain no longer is a Christian nation. And Europe is very secular, as you know, on the whole, very secular. America is a religious country. And as I'm sure you're aware, a big issue here is the interface between religion and politics. Many Americans resent the role that Christianity, fundamentalist Christianity, is exercising on the way the country is run. So there's a paradox here, it seems to me, that if you feel more at home in the US than you did in Europe, that's a little odd, isn't it, given that Europe is secular and the US is not. The US is a religious country.
But I feel very much at home in Europe. I mean, like, my home was in Holland for the past 14 years. It's a Protestant nation. It's a nation where I wouldn't really say it's not a Christian nation. The Christians I know call themselves atheists, but they also respect religion. They'll go to, like, one of my very good friends had her child baptized, and she invited me to the baptism. And we had a dance, we drank some wine, and the priest said he made lots of wishes that were all beautiful for the baby girl. I want you to live in freedom, and I want you to this, and I want you to be very happy, and so on and so forth. And I was like, I told my friend, and yet you are not a Christian, you're an atheist. The priest, you could have wished all this in your garden, which is much more lovely. And we didn't have to go to all of this. But then the couple said, but there is tradition. We did this because we believe in this tradition. And people marry in churches and that sort of thing, but we don't believe in Christianity. So in terms of being consistent with my faith in saying, okay, I can be an atheist,
I understand.
I'm more comfortable in Europe. With America, it depends on who you're talking to. I've met people who are virulently atheists, and I've met people who want to convert me to Christianity.
There's no middle way in this country.
I don't know. So I've met, and I've also, that's why I'm being very careful. I haven't been here long enough to give a well thought through opinion on this is the average American.
Right.
And every prejudice I had when I came here has been thwarted. People are not fat, they're not carrying guns, they're not invading anyone, they're the most tortured people in the world about foreign policy. I mean, one thing that divides this country is what is going to be our foreign policy. And living comfortably outside of America, you would think that all Americans want to invade other countries. They're all arrogant. They don't want to listen to anybody. They just go line dancing, beer drinking, burger eating, and that was the prejudice.
I've heard some of that does go on.
And that's not, and I haven't seen, so I can't, to be quite honest, I should be careful to say I don't know what to think yet.
It is interesting to me that, you know, that America has found a way to bring in people from so many different backgrounds and turn them into Americans. And it does seem that there is a particular problem with Islam as opposed to other religions in doing that. In Europe does have this problem to contend with. Tell us a little bit about what you think Europe should be doing to address the problem. I mean, what should Europe's governments be doing? I think we know already that you feel very strongly that governments have got to get out of this mode of denial.
Yeah.
Beyond that, are there policies? And let me give you a specific instance. I think you took a view, didn't you, on the French controversy about the headscarf ban.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I agree. I pretty much agreed with the law. The French government was faced with what the UK is being faced with now, in which every time someone appears with a headscarf in school, in a niqab covering yourself, 12-year-old, 13-year-olds covered in niqabs, coming to school, to courts, to all the public places. The British now have incident after incident after incident. They have no idea what to do. They don't seem to have worked out what to do with it. The French just puts together a so-called committee of experts to look into all matters, and they found that, okay, it's bringing religion into the public space. They also found that some of the younger, especially kids, who could not have made independent decisions were being manipulated by radical elements within their own communities. They have a history of laïcité, where they have this radical separation of church and state, and they came to the conclusion it's not only the headscarf or just any Islamic symbol. Right. They said any manifest symbol of religious, great religious manifestation, this has to be out. They reached a decision and they went and made a law. Now, having watched France at the time, the British were all, oh, the French, there they go again. Oh, yes, my goodness, you know, they should only be making cheese and making good wine. They should never be thinking about this thing. La, 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 it was great. But now magistrates are walking out of courtrooms. Jack Straw is being, you know, he goes to his constituency and he gets visits from women whom he can't tell whether they're women or whether they're something else. And it goes on and on. So
and of course, you know, he got into terrible trouble for saying in public that he thought Muslim women should remove their veil when they're speaking to other people, and he found it very difficult to communicate with someone whose face was hidden.
Yes, and this has to do with, in both countries, the histories of liberalism, in which case individual liberalism in individual liberty in the UK is a very cherished. So freedom of, you can really, you can guard, you can taunt the public space as long as you get in Britain, which we've all admired and which I really think is a great thing. But France has also has a a terrible experience with religion. And in this particular case, the French have been much more clear than the British.
But do you think they were correct? I just want to get clear on that.
Oh yeah, they are correct.
You do.
Yeah.
Now, but there is a.
So it's not only. I mean, the people who wear the turban.
Yeah.
What are they called? If you wear a manifest cross or the little thing that Jews wear on their head. Right. Yes. Yeah. All of that is not allowed.
But don't you feel that there is? I have very mixed feelings myself about the headscarf ban. I was at The Economist magazine when that happened, and I wrote an editorial for the magazine saying that it was a mistake. I'm not sure now, because I was looking at opinion poll evidence the other day about the proportions of Muslims who say they are British first and Muslim second, and the proportions who say they are French first and Muslim second. And in Britain, only a very, very small minority of Muslims said that they were British first and Muslim second, whereas in France it was almost half. So that made me think that the French insistence on secularism, on a really rigid separation of church and state might make sense. But don't you admit, or don't you agree, that there is a trade-off here if the calculus is individual liberty? I mean, a headscarf ban presumably would be unconstitutional in the US. That it would be unconstitutional under the First Amendment.